Hello everybody, my name is Neil and I'm the founder of my website, which is IELTSWheel.com. Today guys, I'll be helping you to write a complex bar graph taken from Cambridge IELTS Book 15, Test 1. Now let's read and analyze this task in detail. The chart below shows the results of a survey about people's coffee and tea buying and drinking habits in 5 Australian cities. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Now, if you look at this bar graph, you can see this prompt: coffee and tea buying and drinking habits in 5 cities in Australia. Okay, so we have 5 different cities and we have 3 distinct features that we need to focus on. The first one is those who have bought fresh coffee in last 4 weeks. Okay, so this is the first one. Then we have bought instant coffee in last 4 weeks. Okay, so we're talking about the second column. And the last one is visiting a cafe for coffee or tea in last 4 weeks. So a lot of students are confused and don't know exactly how to describe such complex graphs. And today I will show you how to do that. Okay. First of all, it's very important to pay close attention to these keywords: in last 4 weeks, in last 4 weeks, in last 4 weeks, which basically means that the examiner wants to make sure that we can use the present perfect. We must use the present perfect to indicate that something began to happen in the past and has already finished or is still going on at the moment. Okay, so it's very important to use the present perfect here. You can't use just the present simple or the past simple. Okay, make sure to use the present simple because here the keywords are in last. In last means over the last 4 weeks. Okay, now before we write or before we describe this bar graph, it's very important to make a plan, and that's exactly what you need to do when taking the actual IELTS exam. Okay, now let's just look at this plan. First of all, you need to write your introduction, okay, and I will show you exactly how to write the introduction here. And then you must write your second body paragraph, which is called overview. Overview here means that you have to pay close attention to the highest figures and to the lowest figures. Okay, you have to describe this graph overall, and remember, you can't present any percentages here or any exact numbers or figures. You just have to focus only on general trends. Okay, you should not present any numbers. So it's very important to remember when writing your overview paragraph. Okay, so what can we do this? If you look at this bar graph carefully, and if you focus on the highest or largest figures, it's obvious that going to a cafe, okay, which is column number 3, has the highest figures. And therefore, moreover, here we can choose 3 distinct cities which have the largest percentages. So for example, I might say that Sydney, okay, Melbourne, look at this, Melbourne, and Hobart, this is the last one, right? Just look at these figures. Okay, so the percentages are the highest. Therefore, you can indicate these 3 cities, and then going to a cafe, and then plus here means that we're talking about the largest figures. Okay, so that's the indication here. Next, Now, by contrast, which means we need to show something the opposite here. So all the cities, if you look at all the cities, so buying fresh coffee, right? So which is the first one, buying fresh coffee. Okay, so this section has the lowest percentages, right? Look at this carefully. And that's exactly, again, what we can mention in our overview. And that's it. That's what the examiner wants to see. He wants to see the largest figures and the lowest figures in your overview paragraph. Okay, now let's move on. In the next paragraph, which is paragraph 3, for example, again, I can focus on these 3 cities, Sydney, Melbourne, and Hobart. So Sydney, okay, and then Melbourne, okay, and then Hobart, and then I can again talk about this section, which is going to a cafe, which is the last section, and I can talk about the percentages, and I'll say that again, it has a all of these 3 cities have the highest percentage, and then I can be more specific. I have to indicate the exact number here. So in our overview, we need to focus on general trends, and here we need to focus on specific details on the percentages given. Okay, next one. Then I can focus on Adelaide. Okay, Adelaide, this one, and then I can say that going to a cafe. Okay, going to a cafe. Where is it? This is number 3. Okay, and then here that says minus. What does it mean? That the percentage is the lowest here. So if you look at this carefully, right, you can see that the percentage here is the lowest, and that's what we can indicate. But then also I can just write equal, right? So this percentage is equal to what? To the percentage of those who buy fresh coffee. So look at this carefully. Bought fresh coffee. Now the percentages are similar. That's exactly what I need to indicate. Okay, let's move on. The next part is the largest gap. Here we're in Hobart. Now if you look at Hobart, right, I can show the largest gap. Gap here means difference, the largest difference between these 2 percentages, between those who have bought fresh coffee in last 4 weeks and those who have been to a cafe for coffee or tea in last 4 weeks. So I'm showing the largest difference. Okay, so when you describe a graph, look at the columns given and find the largest gap. And if you indicate this, the examiner will be very happy because you're trying to compare and contrast. Compare means when you focus on something similar, and contrast means that you focus on different aspects. Okay, now let's move on. Then I can focus on Hobart going to a cafe. Just look at this, Hobart going to a cafe, which is number 3. And I can say that the difference is twice. Okay, so the percentage of those who have been to a cafe in Hobart is twice as high, okay, as the percentages of those who have bought fresh coffee were in Brisbane and Adelaide. Okay, just look at this. So here we have less than 35%, right? Oh, okay, and here we have 60%. So it's kind of like double, right? So the difference is almost 50%. Okay, not exactly, but again, kind of. So that's exactly what you can indicate in your plan, right? So multiply by 2, I'm showing the difference. Okay, that's it. So if you look at this carefully, I have the whole plan, right? And if you just practice it a lot, you will learn how to do that. And then based on your plan, you have to write a beautiful graph description. And now let me show you exactly how to do it step by step. Okay, and so I will be typing and then I'll be explaining to you the most complex grammar, vocabulary, and linking devices. Okay. All right, now let's get started. Let's just focus on the introduction. Okay, so the bar graph compares and contrasts data on how frequently consumers have purchased fresh or instant coffee over the last 4 weeks and how often they have been to a cafe to drink coffee or tea during the same period. Okay, here we go. So first of all, we need to say that the bar graph, so be very specific. So you have to indicate the bar graph, the line graph, the table, okay? Compares here means we are talking about similar features. Contrast means we're talking about something different. On how frequently, okay, so we're talking about the percentages. So on how frequently consumers have purchased fresh or instant coffee over the last 4 weeks. Okay, so remember, we need to use the present perfect because the keywords are over the last 4 weeks. And how often they have been to a cafe. Okay, the present perfect. Again, we're talking about the same period. Why? To drink tea or coffee during the same period. So we have only one sentence which clearly explains what we see here in this graph. Now, it's important to focus on the next paragraph, which is overview. Okay, as we have mentioned, Sydney, Melbourne, and Hobart have the largest percentages of those who have been to a cafe, and that's exactly what we can mention. Now, how can we do that? Let me show you. Overall, while visiting a cafe to drink coffee or tea has become the most popular in Sydney, Melbourne, and Hobart. Buying fresh coffee has been the least popular activity across all the cities shown. Okay, so in order to write our overview, always focus on the word overall, okay, or as can be seen, for example. Okay, and here I'm trying to contrast to show the largest difference between the highest figures and the lowest figures. So I can also just do this here. Okay, we'll just move it here. Okay, so I'm showing the difference between these two percentages, and that's how I can do it. So overall, while. So use while when you want to show the difference. Visit, so going to a cafe, I can paraphrase and can just write visiting a cafe. Why? To drink coffee or tea has become the most popular in Sydney, Melbourne, and Hobart. Why the most popular? Because the percentages are the highest. Okay, so in Sydney, Melbourne, and Hobart, comma, so remember, while A, comma, B, now we're showing the difference. So here we are showing the largest figures, and here we're showing the lowest figures here. So buying fresh coffee, has been the least popular activity. So popular, less popular, the least popular activity across all the cities shown. In this case, across means if you look at all of them, we can say across, okay, which basically means among, but across sounds much more academic. All the cities, remember the, why? Because we know exactly what kind of cities we're talking about, the ones which are indicated in this graph, not just any cities, and therefore we need to use the. Okay, so once again, we have used only one sentence, and we have used a complex sentence using while, and then we have indicated major trends without showing any percentages, and that's exactly what the examiner wants us to do. Okay, now let's just focus on the next paragraph. So here we have to focus on Sydney, Melbourne, and Hobart. Okay, going to a cafe. Okay, and then the largest percentages. Now, how can we do that? Okay, let me show you. The highest percentages of cafe visitors who enjoy drinking coffee or tea have been recorded in Sydney, Melbourne, and Hobart, with figures being over 60%. Okay, here we go. Now, remember the highest percentages. You don't want to write the biggest percentages. Okay, you can just write the largest percentage. That's okay. But when we're talking about the percentages, we're talking about high percentages or low percentages. Okay, so the highest. So here I'm using a superlative adjective. Okay, a superlative form of an adjective. Okay, so high, higher, the highest. Okay, percentages. We're talking about 3 percentages here. Okay, and therefore percentages, not percentage. So of cafe visitors. So I have paraphrased. So instead of saying going to a cafe, you can just say cafe visitors who enjoy drinking coffee. Remember, enjoy plus ing, enjoy drinking, enjoy playing, ing, enjoy drinking coffee or tea. And here, have been recorded. So when we are talking about a specific number, you can just say have been recorded, have been registered. Where? In Sydney, Melbourne, and Hobart. And here, I'm trying to be very specific, comma, okay, with figures being over 60%. In this case, figures means we're talking about the percentages here. Okay, so remember, when you're talking about the percentages, it's better to write figures. You don't want to write numbers, figures, or percentages or proportions when you're talking about the percentages. So with what plus ing. Okay, so you remember this formula with figures being over 60%. In this case, over means more than 60%. Okay, if you look at this carefully, so all of these percentages are over more than 60%. Okay, so that's exactly what we need to do here. Now let's move on. So the next one is Adelaide, going to a cafe. Okay, and this one has the lowest percentage here, if you look at this carefully, and that's what I'm going to indicate now. Now let's just see how I will do it. By contrast, Adelaide has seen the fewest visitors pursuing this activity at just under 50%. Okay, and now I'm going to focus on this part, which is equal to the percentage of those buying fresh coffee. Now, how can I do that? Which is almost the same proportion as those who have bought instant coffee over the period given, comma, at 49%. Okay, here we go. Now, so here I'm talking about the largest percentages. Now I'm talking about the lowest percentage. And when you want to show the difference between them, the difference between the largest percentage and the lowest percentage, you need to use the keyword by contrast. You can also use the word in contrast. Okay, so by contrast, Adelaide has seen the fewest visitors. So we need to use a present perfect here because we're talking about a 4-week period. Okay, and the 4 has seen here fewer, the fewest visitors pursuing this activity. Pursuing means basically being involved in this activity, doing this activity. And then we need to put a comma here. So comma at, and then we need to be very specific, at just under 50%. Okay, so I don't want to write 49 or 48 here, just under, which means 90, which means 49 or 48 and so forth. Okay, so remember, it's important just to use a comma here at just under 50%. And now I want to compare this percentage with something else. Let's say which is almost the same proportion. Remember, again, when we're talking about about percentages, you can say proportion, figure, okay, or percentages. You don't want to use the word number. Okay, so the same proportion as those who have bought instant coffee over the period given. Over means in this case during the period given, comma. So remember, before the preposition at, make sure to use a comma here, at 49%. That's exactly what I'm doing. Okay, if you look at this, now we have finished this, which is really good. Now, remember I told you, now we need to focus on the largest gap here, the largest difference between these two percentages. So the question is, how can we do that? Now let me show you very, very quickly. So, the largest gap in percentages of those who have visited a cafe and those who have bought fresh coffee in the last 4 weeks. Yeah, I can also just write here in this case, like in the last 4 weeks, can be seen in Hobart with the former shown at approximately 62% and the latter at around 38%. Okay, now so here the largest gap, Hobart, the largest gap in percentages of those who have visited a cafe. Okay, so the last one here, who have visited a cafe, and those who have bought fresh coffee. Okay, we're talking about this one. All right. In the last 4 weeks can be seen in Hobart. I'm using the passive voice here. See, saw, seen. So to be plus past participle in Hobart with the former. Now pay attention to this. When we have mentioned 2 activities, right? So those who have visited a cafe, okay, and those who have bought fresh coffee. Oh, sorry. And so, and just a second, I'm going just to change the color here, and then I'm going to explain. Okay, so those who have visited a cafe and those who have bought fresh coffee. And then with the former means we are referring back to the first category. So with the former, which means those who have visited a cafe, okay, shown at approximately 62%, and the latter is referring to the second aspect that we have mentioned. It means those who have bought fresh coffee. Sorry. So this one is called referencing, and the examiner really wants to see referencing in your writing when you can refer back to the previous figures, numbers, and so forth. And then comma at around 38%. And here you see that I don't want to write the same words, not just like around, but approximately and then around. Okay. Right, now let's just move to the next sentence and the last sentence. We're talking about Hobart, okay, going to a cafe, and now we are comparing this largest percentage with Brisbane and Adelaide. Just look at this with the percentages there. Brisbane and Adelaide, and we are comparing this figures, and we are showing the difference. Okay, now how can we do that? I can show you quickly. The percentage of Hobart coffee and tea fans visiting a cafe is almost twice as high as the proportions of those who have bought fresh coffee over the last month. in Brisbane and Adelaide. Okay, here we go. So the percentage of Hobart coffee and tea fans visiting a cafe is almost here twice as high as, okay, twice as high as. So here we have about 62%. Here we have 30, let's say 3%. So it's kind of like twice as high, okay? And therefore I'm trying to be very specific. I say like it's almost twice as high as the proportions, which means percentages of those who have bought fresh coffee over the last month. Over in this case again means during the last month. So make sure to use this strategy, okay, when approaching your IELTS writing task 1. Okay, so once again, make sure to make your plan, okay, then follow your plan carefully, okay, throughout your description, and try to paraphrase the words given. Pay close attention to the grammar tenses that you need to use. So for example, here it's obvious that we need to use the present perfect, okay? You can't use just the present simple or the past simple, okay? And show a wide range of vocabulary and grammar to the examiner. And don't try to describe every single element given in this graph because it will take too much time. Focus only on some specific details which you want to show to the examiner, okay? And the examiner just really needs to understand that you can compare and contrast, to focus on something similar, different, to show different kinds of fluctuations, okay? And that's what the examiner wants you to do. All right, once again, if you want to buy advanced video courses to prepare for the IELTS exam, or if you want to have individual or group classes, feel free to visit my website, which is IELTSWheel.com. Thank you very much for watching this video. Good luck.